This is Matthew McConaughey.
Natalie Portman.
James Patterson.
Michael Ian Black.
And you are listening to
5 Questions
with Dan Schawbel.
David, I've spoken with a variety of leaders that have navigated this crisis, and all of them say that trust is the most valuable asset right now. What did you learn from all your interviews on how to build and cultivate trust?
Well, I think the leaders that I interviewed all recognize that they have to establish certain credibility with people they want to lead. And the best way to do that is to have people trust you. If you don't establish trust, people aren't going to follow you. People have many choices about people they can follow. And if you don't really establish trust, in the end, the leadership of capabilities go away. So I would say trust is the foremost kind of thing. And the best way you establish trust is leading by example. When George Washington was in Valley Forge in 1777, he could have stayed at the Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton down the street, but he stayed with his troops because he wanted to lead by example. And they really appreciated that. And I think that's the way any great leader is. You establish your standards and you follow through with them, and other people will follow you.
Yeah, I agree. It's about dependability, credibility. And also, it seems like, especially in this pandemic, it's about visibility. Like, are you always out there in a credible way and being transparent and honest with your constituents from a political standpoint or from a corporate standpoint? So that's absolutely right. How has collecting all these stories of successful people affected you personally, changed your outlook on life, and made you personally a better leader?
Well, I started interviewing a few years ago when I had speakers coming to various events and they weren't very good. And so to not tell them they weren't very good, I said, well, I'll let me interview you. You won't have to prepare speeches and it'll be easier for you. And they said, okay. So I started doing it. And I realized when you interview people, if you do it reasonably well, you can get people to talk much more about themselves and you can learn much more about them. And so in all the people that I've interviewed for this particular book, I learned about how they got where they are. And virtually all of them would say there was luck, there was focus on their part for an area, there was persistence, there was failure, there was the ability to prove people wrong. But in the end, I think I learned that all leaders have their flaws, all leaders make mistakes. And if you want to be a leader, you have to put yourself, as Teddy Roosevelt said, in the arena. You can't be sitting in your office and not taking some risks. If you want to be a leader, you have to be out there and be willing to fail and be willing to have people criticize you. And all the people in this book were really in that category. Even the most famous people have that. Their failures, rejections, people made fun of them, and ultimately they came back.
Yeah, I agree. And that leads into the next question perfectly. You named a lot of the common qualities that all these successful leaders you interview have in common. But what are some of the unique differences? And even if you could pull out some examples from some of the stories and interviews you've had about what separates different leaders and how different leadership approaches can be successful.
Well, some leaders are people who are building companies, and they are trying to prove certain kinds of things. They don't have to capture a wide audience at the beginning, just a few people, and then they gradually build from that. But if you're in the government, you have to have from the beginning a lot of people following you, because that's essentially what government's about. What I learned in interviewing these people, and what I learned about leadership generally, is that it's an art. It's not something you're really born with. You know, the old school thinking was you're either born as a leader or you are trained as a leader. I don't know that it's either, but I think you get through life by learning certain things, and you take these skills, and probably by a certain age, you have developed those skills. What I pointed out in the book is that in my own case, I was not much of a leader in what I call the first third of life. I wasn't the all-American athlete. I wasn't a Rhodes Scholar. I wasn't a Supreme Court clerk. All the people that had those jobs or were the brilliant people in my law school class or our college class or high school class, they all did okay, but none of them actually went on to be president of the United States or became famous leaders. And some of the reasons is that people burn out. Sometimes people don't want to be a leader in the second third and the third third. And the people that actually run the world in the second third of their life, when sometimes the third third, are the people who actually were not the superstars in the beginning. So Jeff Bezos was a very smart guy, but he wasn't a Rhodes Scholar, Supreme Court clerk, whatever. Bill Gates, a very smart guy, but a college dropout. So you wouldn't have said necessarily in the first third of their life, these people are going to change the world. The people that change the world are ones who come into their own, sometimes in their 30s or 40s, and then ultimately they push it through in their 50s and 60s and change the world.
Yeah, that just reminds me of this article I read in the New York Times several years ago about all of the cool people in high school and how they kind of burned out and they ended up not, being successful in the next phase of their life because they had so much attention and were so on top of their game in high school, but they weren't able to carry that throughout the rest of their life. So I think that's right on. And
one of the reasons for that is, my theory is this.
Yeah.
For example, won't mention names, but there's a person I know early in my life, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, all-American athlete, superstar at Harvard, Rhodes Scholar, Supreme Court clerk, PhD, every Yale Law School editor-in-chief. Everybody thought this man walked on water, but he had never had to be pushed to do anything. And when he met resistance, he wasn't really able to come up with the character because he had never been tested. He'd never failed. And you have to learn how to fail to really be successful.
Absolutely. I mean, even now, I've been doing this forever, and I'm still having to pitch a lot of people getting rejected before I get an opportunity to be able to leverage that into other opportunities. But and the more ambitious you are, it's not like there's more room at the top. It's not like there's two presidents of the United States. So like the competition actually gets harder, which pushes you more. And then luck and positioning, the weight on that is even greater.
So take a look at the people who are today the 4 richest people in the world. Not that wealth is anything as the most important standard, but they're all entrepreneurs who had ideas that were rejected by people in the beginning. Who thought electric cars would go anywhere? I rejected the Facebook opportunity to invest at the beginning. Who thought that would ever get anywhere? And now these people had these ideas, and people made fun of them, and now look where they are.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I interviewed a big-time venture capitalist, Shamat Palapatiya, the CEO of Social Capital, you probably are familiar with. Yeah. And he said a lot of these entrepreneurs, one of the things that is common is that it comes from a place of insecurity. And that insecurity could be some sort of childhood trauma, but it also could be just enormous amounts of rejection and not fitting in. And then this whole amount of like energy and focus on trying to prove something, maybe not even to other people, but to yourself. And I mean, I can relate to that, but that's something that he said that resonated.
And I tell people all the time, experiment, try many different things. As I said in my book, entrepreneurs on average start companies between the ages of 28 and 37. And after the age of 37, they generally don't do that. So when I started Carlyle at 37, I realized I better do it sooner. It would be too late. I'd have kids and mortgages and other problems. You have to experiment with things, find something you love. And when you love it, you can pursue it. Nobody ever won a Nobel Prize hating what they do. Nobody ever got great in life saying, I'm going to work 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and the weekends are for golf. Those people don't achieve much in greatness, in my view.
Yeah, and I want to focus on philanthropy because obviously you're a massive philanthropist. You've amassed a fortune in private equity, and you've taken the giving pledge to donate half of your wealth, much like Warren Buffett and others. What would you say to persuade other prominent people to be more philanthropic, and how do you decide which causes to donate to?
Yeah. Well, Thomas Jefferson said in the Declaration of Independence that life is really about the pursuit of happiness. Now, in the subsequent 50 years, he never actually defined happiness. He never said, here's how you get to be happy. But as all of us know, the most elusive thing in life is personal happiness. Many people that are successful on the outside are tortured souls in some ways. And people that have lots of artwork or yachts and houses, they're not necessarily happy. Happiness comes from other kinds of things. And my experience is in my own life, the greatest happiness I've gotten has been giving away money or my time or my energy. It's not by having houses or material things. And actually, probably the greatest happiness was pleasing my mother when she would say, she never called me to say, hey, you made a lot of money, great success at Carlyle. She never bothered that. She didn't have any money, but she didn't really care about that. When I started giving away massive sums of money, she would call me and say, look, you're actually doing something useful with your life. And when she passed away a few years ago, and I went through her scrapbooks, the only scrapbook that she had of things I had done was the things that I'd given away money to. She never actually had anything about Carlyle or anything. She didn't care about that because she didn't think that was useful. But, that's what I call the mother test. If your mother's happy with what you're doing, life is pleasurable. And I think that that's happiness is hard to find, but if those people that you can find who are happy, generally it's because they're giving away money or helping other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. My friend called me the other day and she's like, yeah, this extremely successful, Japanese businessman, he recently retired. And one of the ways he's giving away, I don't know about financially, but he's deciding to mentor dozens of young leaders. And I thought that was so fascinating because, of course, now people are like looking to find things to do. And so, he could take up a hobby, but why not mentor young people because you've learned so much and he's not charging them for it. So I thought that was a really interesting thing. And I'm sure it's happening even more. It was just one example.
I like to remind people that philanthropy is derived from an ancient Greek word that meant loving humanity. It didn't mean rich people writing checks. And you can love humanity with your time, your energy, your ideas. So Wendy Kopp created Teach for America. She didn't have any money when she started it. It's a great philanthropic endeavor, you would say, but we don't list it as the top philanthropic gift because it didn't involve money, unfortunately. But I tell people that the greatest pleasure I have is not by giving money away so much, but actually giving my time and ideas to organizations which might help them as well as the money.
Yeah, and that's part of the value of you distributing this book. I mean, you're giving. It's not like the book is $5,000. So you've done all the work to capture a lot of these ideas and stories that will hopefully inspire people and educate them on how to be a leader and be successful in their own life. And what's your best piece of career advice?
My best piece of career advice, which I give to my children, I have 3, and sometimes your children listen to you, and sometimes they don't, is try many different things in your early life. Find things that you like, you think, and try them. But if you don't like them, try something else. I did 4 or 5 things before I started Carlyle, and I had to experiment. So try many different things, but you will never be successful until you find something you love doing. If you want to be great at something, you have to love it. And if you don't love what you're doing, you're never going to be that successful at it.
Yeah, you're the first person out of 2,300 people in over a decade that has the same best piece of advice that I always give. Do as much as you can as early in life as possible because it's the process of elimination to discover not just what you like, it's really self-awareness. You're figuring out who you are, what you like. Do you want to work at a big company, small company? Do you want to start your own company? What type of industry? What skills do you have? What do you gravitate towards? What are people complimenting you on? You're collecting all this data to help you make better informed decisions as you grow older. And I think that we're on the complete same page. And I think but I also would say that even if you're 40, you could take that advice.
Yes, absolutely. And no doubt, some people have done things they weren't that happy with, and later in life, they found happiness in other ways, and they pursued a career late in life and gave them much greater happiness. And again, happiness is the most elusive thing in life. It's hard to get there. And if you can get there, what else do you want out of life?
Perfect. This is a great way to end it. This was highly enjoyable. Thank you so much for packing so much in such a short period of time. Best of luck on your book tour.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Take
Bye.
care.